Heidi Booktube, Nikki here, wrapping up all the books that I read in April. Not literally, because that would be kind of counterproductive. Although I could wrap up all of the books on my TBR and then I have to pick a book and I don't know which one it is because it's wrapped up. That's a really good idea. Not sure why I just thought of that. But let's move on to the books that I read this April. So I read 8 books, 2 graphic novels, and then a couple of single issues of comic books. Overall, I was pretty happy with the books that I read. There were a couple that were disappointing, but I'm getting through series and books on my TBR and just having fun reading, so it's all good in the hood. Homie G. First book I read this month was a fantasy novel that I was reading because the author was coming to a convention near me. I didn't end up going to the convention, but I did end up reading her book, and that is Daughters of the Storm by Kim Wilkins. Kim Wilkins is a local author, so she lives in Australia. This is an adult fantasy about 5 sisters whose father, who is the king, gets magically infected with sort of a magic sickness, and they need to find out who did it and help him out and not let him die and all that important stuff. I love books that follow families and siblings, especially because I have 3 sisters and I'm like, yo, where the sibs at? Probably not the Game of Thrones version of siblings, because sometimes that can get a bit weird. Kim Wilkins has written a really cool ensemble of different women, which is really cool. The 5 sisters are really different. There's Belle, there's this one, she's tattooed. She's gonna be the king. I don't know, don't ask, she'll kill you. Then there's Rose, who's really like romantic. Then there's Ash, who has got like some kind of fantasy powers happening. Then there's Willow and Ivy, who are hilariously useless. As much as I love the characters, the plot did leave a little to be desired. I never felt like the stakes were super high. So I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it. I might pick up the next one, I'm not sure. I don't really read a lot of adult fantasy. The next book was a pre-order and I was really excited to finally read it, and that was Belle. No, not Belle. And that was Miss Mayhem by Rachel Hawkins. This is the sequel to Belle, which follows Harper Price. She's like a teenage high school student, and she's in the South where it's all debutante balls and cotillion. I think they're the same thing, right? Southern belles, and then she gets bestowed upon her these superpowers and she has to protect this guy that she doesn't really like. The first book, I'm gonna be honest with you, I wasn't expecting to love it, like it was going to be hit or miss with me, and it definitely was a hit. I really liked it. So this one I was really pumped to read. The problem was that the setup of this book, it was going to be action-packed, but mostly what happened is there was some action at the start and then it fell into a bunch of relationship drama. Like the first book had a little bit of relationship stuff because it's high school, but I didn't mind because it worked into the story well. But this time it was just like, can we not do this right now? Can we focus, please? So I only gave this one 2.5 stars. I'm still keen to read the next book. Overall, I'm glad I read it, but it was pretty disappointing. If the first book had been like this, I wouldn't have continued the series. Drama llamas. After that, I read another new release. I don't think I pre-ordered this one. I think I bought it after it came out, but I hadn't heard very much about it at all. So I went out on a proverbial limb and I bought We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallich. This book intrigued me for a number of reasons. First of all, freaking just look at this book. Oh my goodness, look at it. This book follows 4 teenagers in high school. They go to the same school. Each have a different way that they're perceived or a different label that they've been assigned, like slacker, overachiever, etc. And what happens is that scientists discover that in 2 months there's a 2 out of 3 chance that the world will be obliterated by an asteroid. What? Don't go into this thinking it's a science fiction. It's more of a contemporary for sure. In fact, reading the description, it sort of reminded me of The Breakfast Club. That's, you know, where you've got the princess and the athlete and the whatever. I really freaking enjoyed this book. It was amazing. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I would totally recommend this to anybody who wants to highlight a book, who wants to get a book and highlight the crap out of it, because there are so many things. There are so many quotes that I want on a poster right now. But it's so like incidentally profound. The way he writes is so awesome. There's just these descriptions and I've never heard a person describe like that. That's amazing. These metaphors that he uses and I'm just like, oh, that's so... Why did you think of that? I really love it. I thought it was great. I did give it half a star off because the plot in the second half does go a little bit unfocused, and I feel like some of the characters got more character development in the end than others, but that's life, right? So YOLO. Now there's music in the story, characters that sing or write music. Tommy Wallich has written an album. I don't know if you can see that's the cover there. an album where you can listen to all the songs that are mentioned and stuff. It's not my cup of tea, his style of music, but it is good quality. So if you want to go check that out too, you can. This is a pretty heavy book though. Just a heads up for self-harm, suicide, sexual assault, violence, drugs. I know that sounds really gnarly. Those things aren't like the whole book, but they do feature. I also got to The Duff by Cody Keplinger this month. I still haven't seen the movie. Everyone and their dragon probably knows about this book already. Basically it's about Bianca who starts an enemies with benefits relationship with a guy who calls her the designated ugly fat friend, because that's the first thing I want to do when someone calls me a bad name. Yes. It was a little bit deeper than I expected. I did give it 3 out of 5 stars. I was close to giving it 2.5, but I gave it the extra half because I could see what it was trying to do. So I thought it was pretty funny. It definitely tried to sort of send a message about using people, about consensual physical relationships being negative without sort of shaming people. It was trying to keep a balance there, which I felt like it did sort of achieve. In the last bit of the book though, there's this kind of other message that's kind of crammed in about choosing stability or something. I feel like the main problem was that there was a good message behind it, but there was a lot of stuff in the way. The next book I read has been everywhere. If you haven't heard about it, I don't know where you've been. But it was like the best book of last year. So I purposefully put off reading this until the hype had kind of passed and I figured it was time. So I read We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. Sorry Not Sorry, but I didn't like it. My main problem was that I knew that there was going to be a big twist, right? Everyone knows there's going to be a big twist. Okay, but my main problem was that I guessed it at like 80 pages in. But I didn't even guess it, okay? Because I'm not a guesser. I'm not a let's try and figure this mystery out. I'm watching Sherlock. I'm not like, let's piece the clues together. No, because I want Sherlock to put the pieces together. That's his job. I went so far out of my way to not be spoiled, and then I spoiled myself by figuring it out. I didn't guess. It became apparent to me. It became extraordinarily apparent to me. Like, I could not see the outcome. I don't know. And I know that lots of people, like there's so many people who this hasn't happened to, so it's obviously not, like, did I read it wrong? I don't know. Outside of knowing what the twist was going to be, I found the writing kind of boring. It didn't capture my interest. I have been working through the Artemis Fowl series, and this month I read Artemis Fowl and the Time Paradox, and Artemis Fowl and the Atlantis Complex, and these are books 6 and 7, so I still have one more book, book 8, which I have I'm awaiting in the mail. So the first one was the Time Paradox. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed it more than the one previous to this because I felt like that one kind of got a bit goofy at times. When I was rating this one, I think I gave it 4 stars, and a lot of it was dependent on what they did next. So when I came to the next book, I was expecting a lot because they set up things and things happened and it was all like, where do we go from here? So then we come to the next book, the Atlantis Complex, which interestingly had like a bit of a mental health focus, but the thing was it didn't really take us anywhere from here. I found the villain completely boring in this one. So boring. I actually skimmed bits of this book. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. It was disappointing. It was disappointing, but I'm still looking forward to the last book. I'm sure it's going to be huge blockbuster awesomeness. I can't wait. Then I read another fun one, Maximum Security by Robert Muchamore. This is the 3rd book in the Cherub series. We've got a boy named James who was taken in by this place called Cherub and taught to be like a kid spy, but it's less Alex Rider, like giant explosions and like kung fu flips and stuff, and it's very much more gritty and down to earth and realistic. It's not either better or worse, it's just very different. And so in this one they have to infiltrate a prison. My main complaint with these books is that the stakes get pretty high at times, but they never really peak. And normally with these kind of books, I mean, if you've read Alex Rider or, you know, any of the young 007 fiction type stuff, they usually end with a big bang. Robert Muchamore is probably trying to go against that a little bit, but I found the end a little anticlimactic. It doesn't ruin the books by any means, and I definitely want to read the next one. I think I have it up there somewhere. There it is. You can't see, it's all blurry. But I'm really enjoying this series. I'm pretty sure I gave this one a 4 stars. So the first comic book I read was actually my TBR pick for last month, which I filmed but didn't get to edit or post, and I'm not going to bother with it now. It's a little bit late. And that one was Tales of the Vampires by Joss Whedon, Jane Espenson, a bunch of Buffy contributors and comic book people. This one is Tales about vampires. What? Hold the phone. Who would have expected? It's got really varying art styles. You've got like cool arty ones, normal comic book styles. Like, that was really refreshing to have so many different comic book styles. You were never bored. Awesome cameos of characters as well, like Angel and Spike and Buffy. So I gave this, I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, probably 4.5 out of 5. There was only one comic where I was kind of like drifting through. The next one I read was Bravest Warriors Volume 2. I love Bravest Warriors so much. Bravest Warriors is a cartoon on YouTube on a channel called Cartoon Hangover. It's created by Pendleton Ward, who created Adventure Time. So if you like Adventure Time, you might like this. The thing is, I don't really like Adventure Time. I don't hate it, but it's never resonated with me. This one I immediately clicked with. I think because it's quite bizarre, it's quite weird. The episodes are pretty short. It also has a different showrunner, so it's not the same. The series follows these 4 characters, Danny, Wallow, Beth, and Chris, and they have all these absurd missions and stuff, and it's really fun. I really recommend this for people who like, you know, bright, colourful, cartoony, graphic novels. Probably overall would give this 4.5 out of 5 stars as well. The short stories are really cool too. I also picked up the first issue of Spider-Gwen. I think they're on like the 3rd issue now. Like I'm not keeping up to date with it. I'll probably wait until they're put into a trade paperback, which is like one of these when it's like a couple of issues put together. But I really like this. It's fun. I love her costume so much. I love the art style. I love the coloring. It's nice and unique without being too out there. The other single issue that I read was the first issue of Star Wars. This is a Loot Crate exclusive, so it's a variant cover, so I got it because it came in a Loot Crate, and I'm pretty excited because Marvel is doing Star Wars now, and I'm pretty sure Star Wars has always been done by Dark Horse. I've never really read a lot of Star Wars comics. It's really cool to see all of my favorite characters, Han Solo, Chewie, R2, C-3PO. Like, it's really, I love the original trilogy so much, so I'm so glad that this is happening. The art's cool. I feel like it sticks to the original trilogy, like, you know, the costume and the looks and everything, with slightly updated, so that it still feels, it doesn't feel dated. So it's very cool. I think, again, I'll wait for these to be collected into volumes, but I definitely want to read this series because it's really, really freaking fun, and I love it. Yeah. So those are all the things that I read in April. What did you read in April? What did you do in April? Where were you the night of April 18th? I was probably watching Netflix, let's be real. I'm gonna try Bookstack. That's what I read. This is it. Oh, my hair, my hair. I'm gonna go clean up that mess I just made there because I dropped all of those books quite promptly after putting them down. I don't even know that's possible to drop something after you've put it down, but I did. It happened. And I will see you next time. But in the meantime, go read a comic book. Just one. Just pick a comic book. Read it, report back, Nikki out.